this message down the drain, okay? Because the bottom line is that if you have money, that doesn't mean you're always going to have money. How many have noticed that's true, right? Just because you have some right now doesn't mean you're always going to have it. It doesn't give you that much security, does it? Because the Bible says riches make themselves wings and fly away toward heaven. And you know that's true, isn't it, right? You feel like, man, I'm doing great. And then next week you're like, man, where did it go? It's easy to feel that way. I've talked to guys, I talked to a guy a while back, he said, man, I have blown through hundreds of thousands of dollars just with irresponsibility and foolishness. And here's the core truth of this series, okay? If you're taking notes, I want you to track with me today, and we're going to talk about how to make sure you never have enough, okay? No, so you can do the opposite then, right? And you can make sure you have enough, right? But we're going to talk about it. Let me give you, John Wesley, the founder of the Methodist Church, gave 3 points of advice on money. He said, get all you can, save all you can, give all you can. And that's pretty good right there. That's pretty good classic advice on money. Here's the core truth of everything I'm going to tell you. All 4 messages in this series. Here's the bottom line of all of it. What you need is not more money. What you need is not more money. Now, some of you are like, Yeah, because you're thinking, no, what I need is more money. Let me tell you, what you need is not more money, it's more wisdom. What you need is not more money, it's more wisdom. Let me tell you why that's true. Because the Scripture says it presents wisdom. If you read the first 8 chapters of Proverbs, it presents wisdom as a beautiful woman. It personifies, if you're familiar with that. Like it'll make a characteristic and give it human characteristics. It'll take a virtue like wisdom and give it human voice. And it personifies wisdom as a beautiful woman who says to you, if you'll come and learn from me, I will give you this and I will give you that. And so wisdom is speaking to you in those first 8 chapters of Proverbs. And as I've been reading them to my kids, I've been struck over and over again with how wisdom presents itself. It says, in my right hand are riches and honor. Okay, in other words, with wisdom comes the money that you need. That's why what you need is not more money. I could point you to a boatload of people who got more money, but they didn't have more wisdom, and it didn't matter that much in the final analysis because they blew it. It's a legend in the world. In fact, I should have printed out. I've got a collection of stories about lottery winners who are bankrupt. You say, man, I don't even know how I would spend that much money. No, yeah, you would. Yeah, you would. I don't know. That's just crazy. It's easy to talk about it, but what you need, my friend, is not more money. What you need is more wisdom. In fact, now there may be a point in your life where you say, well, Darrell, what I need right now is if my job would just give me a $2 an hour raise, I'd be fine. Well, maybe wisdom would say to you, become a better worker and get that $2 an hour raise. Or maybe wisdom would say to you, go find a different job. You understand what I'm saying? What you need is not more money. What you need is more wisdom, because wisdom, in the right hand of wisdom, are riches and honor. Okay. Now, here's the one thing I want you to walk away with today. Because most people say, if I had more money, I'd have less stress. That's what most people say. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a measure in which that could be true, isn't it? There's a little measure in which it could be true. Because you think about it, it would alleviate your stress for a little while, wouldn't it? It would, for a little bit. It would take off some pressure. That's true. The whole family would show up, wouldn't they? Yes. Let me tell you 2 verses to prove to you that it's not true that if you had more money, you'd have less stress. Are you ready? 2 verses. The first one is this. The sleep of a laborer is sweet. Ecclesiastes 5:12. It's not on your handout. The sleep of a laborer is sweet, whether he eats little or much, but the abundance of a rich man will not permit him to sleep. I talked to a friend of mine who his father passed away, who was quite well-to-do. He wound up with a bunch. Hi, Taya. It's okay. He talked to a bunch of his father-in-law left him a bunch of money. And he put that money into a bunch of rental properties. And he talked to me while he was trying to figure and work through all that. He said, man, it's like I'm losing sleep over this. Like, man, am I supposed to do this with it, or am I supposed to do that with it? And what about the real estate market right now? Is it going to go down, or is it... The abundance of the rich man will not permit him to sleep. You just have a different set of stresses, right? You may not worry about how you're going to put food on the table, but you start freaking out about how you're going to make sure you don't get back poor again, right? The second verse is this. Dan, I'm glad you said that because about the family all showing up. Because here's what it says. As riches increase, so do those that consume them. Yes, they do. That's right. Riches increase, and so do those that consume them. All of a sudden, the money goes up, and the friends go up, right? And the money goes up, and so does the taste in clothes, and so does the taste in vehicles, and so does the taste in homes. And the bigger home means more to OG&E, right? Because I had a family member once that bought himself a great car, and then he clipped a curb and blew the tire out, and it cost $400 for the right front tire because you had to buy that tire. You couldn't buy it. It was like,
That's great.
As riches increase, so do those that consume them. More money doesn't mean less stress. The one thing I want you to walk away with, here it is on your handout. Ready? What we usually do is to think we can alleviate stress by buying things, we go into debt. And debt is the opposite of contentment. Debt is the opposite of contentment. Now, I'm not going to be today one of those preachers that gets up and hollers and yells about just debt. Because debt is really not the enemy. Preaching a message and calling debt the enemy is a little bit like a doctor trying to treat your cough when you've got pneumonia. It is. Like, I'm not going to get up here and just holler about debt and tell you got to get out of debt because debt is dumb, and I'm not going to do that. Because the problem is that under the surface is where the debt came from. It's here. The money is primarily a heart issue. It's primarily a heart issue. And so here's the problem. If you're taking notes, you can write, my number one point is debt is the opposite of contentment. You can write that again. You might want to write it twice since I'm going to have you write it twice just to make sure you can remember. Here's what I'm saying. I'm saying that what causes financial problems a lot of times is greed. It's greed. You know what caused the financial crash in 2008? Well, if you ask a Republican, they'd tell you this, and you ask a Democrat, they'd tell you that, and you ask a person in the banking industry, and they'd tell you this, and you ask a person in the real estate industry, and they'll tell you something else. I'm going to tell you. You ready? Here's what caused the crash in 2008. This is going to be brilliant analysis. I hope you're ready to write this down. This is good. Politicians greedy for power, giving incentives to companies greedy for money, giving loans to people greedy for things they couldn't afford. That's it right there. That's it. That's the whole thing. Did you notice a common theme in all that? Because everybody wants to blame it on Republicans or Democrats. I would just like to brush all that aside and say, have you looked at your heart recently? Right? Because contentment and greed can't coexist in the same heart. Debt is the opposite of contentment. What is greed? Here we go. Greed is desiring things so much that you're willing to be unwise or sinful to get them. Okay. Desiring good things in itself may not be greed. Okay, because I desire to eat good food. I'm in favor of good food. I'm in favor of some good barbecue. I'm in favor of that. I'm in favor of steak and baked potato. I'm in favor of that. I'm in favor of not eating ramen noodles all the time. I'm in favor of that, okay? I had a friend on Twitter the other day, a friend of mine said, I discovered that if you take ramen noodles and put Taco Bell hot sauce on top of them, it tastes exactly like poverty. That is so true, isn't it? Yeah. Wow, yeah, it does. I'm in favor of, it's not like saying I like good things is evil or bad in itself, okay? Greed is desiring things so that you would be willing to be unwise or sinful to get them. And so greed itself, the love of money, greed will drive people to do things like gambling and lottery and dealing drugs and working too much and killing their family and breaking their own health, and all kinds of things flow out of that. In fact, look at Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 10. Ready? Whoever loves money never has money enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with his income. True story, they did a study and they asked people, how much do you need to be content? And the average person gave them a number that was about twice as much as they were currently making. Okay, so I don't know how much you're currently making, but if it's like, let's say you're making $20,000 a year, okay? 1 in 5 families in this neighborhood makes, and 1 in 3 families makes under $20,000 a year in this neighborhood. Okay? So let's say you're making $20,000 a year. You would say, you know what, if I was making $40,000 a year, okay, I'm currently making X number per week. If I was double that, man, I think I'd be good. I'd be golden. I'd be rich. You know what they said, what they did? They came back a few years later, and they surveyed those same people and asked them, how much would it take to make you content? Now, they checked their incomes, they asked them their incomes, and a lot of them had doubled their income in those few years. They had. They got a better job, they'd worked harder, and they had doubled their income. And they asked them, how much would it take to make you content? You know what they said? You know, didn't it? About twice what they were making then. That's what it would take to make them content. So, whoever loves money never has money enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with his income. John Rockefeller, they asked him one time, Mr. Rockefeller, what would it take? How much is enough? John Rockefeller, maybe you don't know, was one of the richest men in the world in his era. His family is still very, very wealthy people, a lot of different ones, the Rockefeller family. They asked, Mr. Rockefeller, how much is enough? And he smiled at the reporter that asked the question and said, $1 more. $1 more. Let's read 1 Timothy 6, 3 through 11. Ready? If anyone teaches false doctrine and does not agree to the sound instruction of our Lord Jesus Christ and to godly teaching, he is conceited and understands nothing. Men of corrupt mind have been robbed of the truth and think that godliness is a means to financial gain. I want to push pause right there and say, does this remind you of anything you have ever heard a professional Christian say on TV? That's the reason I don't wear this suit very much, because I think it reminds me of a TV evangelist, and I don't like it. Because I have heard people say, fill out that donation card. Now lay it down there in front of the screen, and I'm going to hold my hand on this pile of donation cards, and I'm going to pray that God's going to... No, you know you've heard it. Y'all looking at me like, I don't do that. You know you've heard that. They suppose that godliness is a means to financial gain. Oh, I should be godly because then God would give me what I really want. Am I making sense? Yeah, it makes God into an idol giver. I'm going to get a God because then he'll give me my idol that I really want. No, my friend. God in himself is where the joy of being a Christian resides, not when he blesses you with a bass boat and a Cadillac. It's not. Right? Let's keep going. But godliness with contentment is great gain. Okay, some of y'all need to circle that one right there. Okay, godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain we can take nothing out of it. But if we have food and clothing, we will be content with that. The word clothing, by the way, could be translated shelter. And so food and shelter, okay? So you got something to eat and a roof over your head. You know what? You can be happy. You can be, I will tell you, it is possible to be happy with that. People who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge men into ruin and destruction, for the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Some people, eager for money, have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves through with many griefs. But you, man of God, flee from all of this. Run from this love of money. Get out of there. Get clear of it and pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, endurance, and gentleness. Pursue after being that kind of man, and the rest of it comes along at its right moment. Now, I'm not going to take time to read to you Luke 12, 13 through 15. Let's move on so I can make sure I got enough time to finish tonight. All right, finish this morning. Number 2, debt is not, the second point I want to tell you is this, that debt is not a sin, but it is unwise. It's not a sin. Okay, I owe money on a house. I don't owe money on a car, never have, because I bought cheap dirtbag cars. But I do owe money on a house. The church owes money on this building. Okay, we're paying it off. By the way, we're getting close to paying it off. That's going to be good stuff right there. We're going to be able to be blessed and be more open, debt-free. That sounds good to me. Debt is not a sin, but it is unwise. Now you say, I'm not sure if that's right, Darrell, because in Susie Orman in her book told me that debt was a tool and I could leverage it wisely, and my FICO score, my credit score is, it's got to be important that you carry on and make it. Okay, let's read. Okay, here we go. Let no debt remain outstanding. That means pay your debts, right? Okay, get rid of them, pay them off. Don't let them sit out there. Don't let them sit out there. Pay off your debts, except the continuing debt to love one another. Proverbs 22:26. Do not be a man who strikes hands in pledge. This is an old picture from years ago. They would strike their hands. I don't know whether maybe it's a fist bump. They would strike hands in pledge, like they would promise. I promise to pay this back, or I promise to, if Dan can't pay it, I'll pay it. Okay, I would be a co-signer then with Dan, right? And it says, do not be a man who strikes hands in pledge or puts up security for debts. If you lack the means to pay, your very bed will be snatched out from under you. I want you to picture that, okay? Next time your family comes to you and says, could you please co-sign? Just close your eyes and see yourself laying there in bed in the middle of the night, and all of a sudden, okay, picture that, and then decide if you want to co-sign or not, all right? Because that's where it's at. He who puts up security for another will surely suffer, but whoever refuses to strike hands in pledge is safe. A man lacking in judgment strikes hands in pledge and puts up security for his neighbor. Okay? It's not a sin. It's just unwise. Now, our culture teaches exactly the opposite of this. They will tell you debt is a tool. It's a tool. You leverage it, you use it wisely, you pay off that credit card every month, and you use your points. How many have ever been pulled in by that one, right? You use your points. I'm going to use my points. I'm going to use my points. Well, the problem is that they're not that generous. Okay, Chase Bank and Citibank and Discover, they're not that generous. Actually, you're probably not going to come out on the better end of them. Their whole business is predicated on the fact that they get money from you. That's what it is. It is. And so you put, as Dave Ramsey would say, you put $1,000 in the bank at Chase or wherever, and then you got that $1,000 in the bank, and then there's an emergency, and so you think, well, I'm at the store and I'm just going to buy these kids' school clothes because it's an emergency, right? We didn't know the kids were going to go to school. So I'm going to swipe this card, and then then of course Christmas is coming, and it's an emergency, right? So I'm going to swipe this card, and because Christmas never comes in December, right? We didn't know it was coming, and it's just an emergency. And plus, little Johnny, if he doesn't get the, that whatever, then he's going to scream and yell. And so it's an emergency. And then you get the credit card statement, and you open it up, and you say, $1,000. Who's been using my credit card? And then you discover it was you. And I said, yeah, I did that and I did that, but I didn't know all this added up to $1,000. Let me tell you what happened. You loaned them $1,000 in your bank account, and that you loaned it to them at 1.5% or 0.5% these days, 0.5%, and they loaned it back to you at 18%. That's what happened. That's why their building is this tall and your house is this tall, okay? That's why. Because they had a plan. It's unwise to go into debt, particularly for things that go down in value, which is almost everything, including cars. It is. They will go down in value. You drive it off the lot and it's worth 20% less than you paid for it.
That's right.
It's true. So, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Here's what we're going to do. Number 3, if you're in debt, passion and focus is the way out. Passion and focus is the way out. Okay, I probably am talking to some people right here in a crowd this size. The odds are I'm talking to somebody who is in debt, and it's significant. And it's like, I'm never going to manage to do it. I can't. I'm never going to be able to pay for it. I can't even hardly get my minimum payments made right now. I can't. Okay, if that's you, I want to tell you this. Look at Proverbs chapter 6, verses 1 through 5. Ready? My son, if you have put up security for your neighbor, if you have struck hands in pledge for another, okay, you've signed your life away. If you've been trapped by what you said, okay, you signed and said, I'll pay. I promise to pay according to the cardholder agreement. You've been trapped by the words of your mouth. Then do this, my son, to free yourself since you have fallen into your neighbor's hands. Go, humble yourself, press your plea with your neighbor, allow no sleep to your eyes, no slumber to your eyelids. Free yourself like a gazelle from the hand of the hunter, like a bird from the snare of the fowler. Here's what I want to tell you. Here's the picture I want to draw for you. Free yourself like a gazelle from the hand of the hunter. What is the hunter of the gazelle out there on the plains of Africa? What is it? It's a lion? Yeah, or a cheetah. Let's go cheetah. I wish I had a video of it. Okay? Wish I had a video to put it right up here. Because Discovery Channel, right? That's for copyright stuff. I'm not going to do it, all right? But you've seen the gazelle and it's going along and here comes the cheetah. He's sneaking along, he's watching. And then the gazelle sees the cheetah. He senses something's wrong, and he takes off, and the cheetah pows after him like that. The cheetah is the fastest land animal, 70 miles an hour, at least for short distances. And they can move. But that gazelle, most of the time, wins the race. Most of the time. You know why? Because it's all I'm doing today. I'm getting away from cheetah. That's all I'm doing. I'm not stopping to smell the flowers. I'm not going to go over here and eat some grass. All I'm doing, like all of a sudden the to-do list went shoop, and it's clear, and there's only one thing left, and it's in the number 1 position, and it says, get away from cheetah. That's all I'm doing today. If you would look at your life, you look at your debt and you say, you know what? All I'm doing today is getting away from cheetah. That's all I'm doing today. I'm not going to go out to eat. I'm not going to see the inside of a restaurant. And when I get just enough margin that I can see the inside of a restaurant, I'm going to see dollar menu. I'm going to be a dollar millionaire. And it's going to be ridiculous. I'm going to sell everything and the kids are going to think they're next. I'm going to pick up a second job. I'm going to give no slumber to my eyes and no sleep to my eyelids. I'm going to free myself like a gazelle from the hand of the hunter. Now listen, if you get that kind of intense, you get out of debt. The average, this is true, Financial Peace University, the average person that goes into debt, no matter how much they have, the average person is completely debt-free in 2 years. Completely debt-free in 2 years. A lot of them are quicker than that. Now, it takes intensity for a period of your life, for a season of your life, but you can get free. Passion and focus. So I'm going to give you real quick, because I want to be practical. This is stuff you're going to study a whole lot more intensely in Financial Peace University, but this is courtesy of Dave Ramsey, okay? DaveRamsey.com, the debt snowball. Ready? Cut up your credit cards. By the way, just this week, since I was studying for this message, I went to optoutprescreen.com, and it only lasts for 5 years, but I opted out of all pre-screened credit card offers. They can't send them to me. They can't send them to me in the mail. You can opt out permanently through mail, but I just did it for 5 years, just renewed it, and they're not allowed to send me anything. They can't. Like they have to remove my name from their list. Cut up all your credit cards. Some of you, that's like physical pain. It's like, I'm friends with this guy. This one gives me 1% cash back. And so that's working real well for you, isn't it? 1% cash back. Cut up all your credit cards. Call the companies and negotiate a lower rate. Tell them, I will roll the balance over to somebody else, and you'll never see one more dime of my money if you don't give me a lower rate. List your debts, smallest to largest. By the way, some of you just haven't wanted to face it. You haven't wanted to look it in the eyeball. Okay? You're going to have to. You're going to have to look it in the eyeball and say, I'm in debt, and it's not good, and I'm going to figure it out right now. I'm going to sit down, I'm going to get a piece of paper, I'm going to list everything from every debt I can think of. I owe Jim this much, and I owe Chase that much, and I owe this much on overdraft, and I owe this much on... Get it all down on paper, and that starts, by the way, just starts to feel like at least there's a little more measure of control when you just know what you're facing. List all your debts, smallest to largest. Start paying minimum payments on everything except the smallest one. Now, this is backwards. Dave will explain to you in the class. He'll explain why he does that. I'll go ahead and explain it to you. Here's why. Because most people would say start with the one with the lowest interest rate. He says start with the one that's smallest. Here's why. Because he says you need a win. You need a win under your belt. You need a feeling of, bam, I paid that one off. And you need it soon rather than later. And he said, because personal finance isn't just about how the numbers crunch, it's about your behavior. It's about mindset. It's about intensity. It's about feeling like I can do this. That's personal finance. And so that's why. Ready? Let's keep going. Attack the smallest one with everything you've got. Yard sales, name the dog eBay. Okay? When the smallest debt's gone, roll over that and add it to the minimum payment on the next one. And it gets bigger and bigger and bigger as it rolls down the list. And soon enough, everything is gone. Average 18 months to 2 years. Now, is that a long time? Yeah, it's a long time. But you got a long time to live yet by the grace of God. If God spares you, and Jesus doesn't return, we've got a while to live. I plan on living a little bit longer. And so you've got years to think about after this. Put it at the top. Deliver yourself like a gazelle from the hand of the hunter. All I'm doing today is getting out of debt. That's all I'm doing today. By the way, did you know the U.S. government is officially bankrupt? It is. No, like if they barged into every one of your houses and every other person in America and took all of your money, we wouldn't be able to pay off, like everybody's money in all of America, we couldn't pay off the national debt? No, that's true. That's just a fact. And it's all those Democrats and Republicans and independents up there that did it. And I'm saying, what in the world is going on, people? So what I'm telling you is, as Christians, let's not be like Congress. Let's not do it. They can't seem to grasp the idea of living on less than you make. But now, hear me now. For a Christian, this is all about contentment, isn't it? This is not just about how to get out of debt. Something's got to change in here. Otherwise, you know as well as I do, you'll go right back into it again. I think I shared this story with you. I'll share it one more time. I worked in a warehouse with a lady who we worked together on projects, and we were together working on assembly line a lot, and she and I would just pass time by talking, and she would tell me about her financial situation, and it was a mess, y'all. She had $20,000 of credit card debt, and they liquidated a good part of her husband's IRA, 401k, and paid off the debt. Paid off $20,000. And you know what happened? Because they paid it off, but they didn't change behavior. They didn't change in here. And they went $18,000 right back in credit card debt, just like that. And I said, I was so blown away by this because I grew up in a family where my dad, he knew how to pinch pennies. Abraham Lincoln would scream regularly at our house. It's just, pinch a penny like nobody. And thank you. 2 people got that. I appreciate you guys. Thank you. I grew up in that kind of household, and I was looking at my dad and looking at her and saying, "What did you buy?" This lady that went $18,000 in debt. I said, "What did you buy?" And here's what she said. She stopped. We were opening up these bottles of product and dumping them, and she looked at me and she said, "That's the thing. I'm not sure." She didn't know. She said, "Let's see. There was a little bit of furniture, and I think we took a trip maybe, and there was we ate out sometimes, and some Walmart type things. And there was nothing to show for it. $18,000, and she and her husband both worked. Now, this is about, since we're Christians, this is about contentment. This is about something that happens in here, not just something that happens in your wallet. It is something that happens in here. So, number 4. If you're not in debt, contentment and planning is the way you stay out. If you're not in debt, contentment and planning is the way you stay out. So let me give you a scripture on planning, okay? Go to the ant, you sluggard. I love the sluggard. Isn't that a great word? Let's just all say sluggard together. Sluggard. Now you can use that with your children when it's like they don't want to do their work. You sluggard. What a great word. I'm joking. Don't do that, all right? Teach them, work with them, train them. Don't do that. Calling names doesn't help anybody. Go to the ant, you sluggard, you lazy man. Consider its ways and be wise. For it has no commander or overseer or ruler, yet it stores up its provisions in the summer. What's the summer? It's when things are good, right? It's when things are good. It's on payday. And the day after payday, that's summer. It's summer. It's when things are good. Store up provisions in summer and gathers its food at harvest. How long will you lie there, you sluggard? When will you get up from your sleep? A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty comes on you like a bandit and scarcity like an armed man. Suddenly. Now, here's what I'm saying. Some of you, if you're going to get out of the mess you're in financially, and you're going to recapture your financial life, and you're going to get everything from rent quick and payday loan paid off, and you're going to get your stuff out of pawn, and you're going to get rid of, if you're going to get back to the place where you are not a taker because you're desperate for everybody around you to help you. Now, please hear me, my friends, okay? I love you. I care about you. But I moved here from a place where the average income in the neighborhood that my dad lives in is $85,000 a year. And I moved here, and the average income inside a mile of right here is $35,000 a year. And the only reason it's that high is because it goes a mile south. Okay? 1 in 3 families within a mile of this church, 1 in 3 families makes less than $20,000 a year. 1 in 5 makes less than $15,000 a year. I moved here and I was blown away by the number of pawn shops and payday loan places. They didn't have them in my neighborhood. They didn't. And now I'm a proud Southsider now. I love this place. Okay, this is where God has called me to work, and by the grace of God, I am content and I am joyful. Okay? Yeah, absolutely. That's fine. I love Oklahoma City. But here's what I'm saying. Here's what I'm saying to you. There is a scripture that says that the goal of us as Christians is that we would work with our own hands and not be dependent on anyone. That's the goal. That's the hope of us as Christians, is that never again would there come a time when you would have to regularly pick up the phone and try to hustle $100 to pay your light bill. Never again. That's the goal. That is a Christian financial life by the grace of God in a country that is blessed. Now, in other countries, I cannot say that to be true. Okay? There are places where Christians are persecuted and hated and outcast and they lose their job. But there's a reason why these broad principles are in place in Proverbs. And the broad principles say that if you handle your money with wisdom, that you can be responsible enough as a Christian where you don't have to be desperate and dependent on other people. By God's grace. Now, I want to say this one more thing. Right now, there are some of you that are not in that place. And we love you, and we are going to help you, and we're going to stand beside you, and we're going to link arms together, and we're going to be better and stronger together than we are separately. And if you're in that place, I respect you anyway. Okay, I respect you enough to look at you in the eye and say, there's a better goal for you. There is. But I also respect you enough to say, and I love you. I care about you. You're not less of a person. You're not some person who's a victim and you're always going to be down here and you're always going to be stepped on. You're not. No, by the grace of God, He has bought you with a price, and you can rise by your work ethic. You can rise by your wisdom. You can rise and become a person who is stable and who is able even to give to others by the grace of God. To become a generous, godly, systematically giving person. But there's one thing that's going to have to be dealt with, and it's in here. Because if you can't be content, if your heart is full of greed, if you subscribe to the lie of our culture that says more is better, what I call the myth of more. More is better. Newer is better. I've got to have a new one. I've got to have the latest. And I need to spend anything and do whatever I need to and hustle it in order to get it. If you subscribe to that lie, you won't ever reach the place I'm talking about. You will forever, even trying to be a Christian, trying to follow Jesus, you'll forever be desperate. Forever. Unless you're willing to work and be responsible and care for your money and act wisely. Otherwise, it won't happen. But by the grace of God, I believe in you. I'm looking around this congregation, and I don't put on a scale of 1 to 10, pardon me. On a scale of 1 to 10, I don't put a 2 on anybody's head here. No, I put a 10. I put a 10 on you. So does God. He knows what you're capable of becoming, a redeemed, freed person who is not subject to the lie of our culture that says the only way you can be happy is getting stuff. That's a lie. It's a lie. And contentment is the opposite of all of that. So let me tell you the way that God has taught me to be content. The first step to contentment is knowing that this life is not all there is. No, really, this life is not all that there is. There is another life after this. The second step to contentment is knowing that Jesus on the cross bought that life for me. He did. We're talking about clearing debts. He paid my debt. He did. I owed a debt to God I could never have repaid, and there was no way I was going to do enough good to somehow repay the debt of sin and wickedness and foolishness that I owed to God. It was never going to happen. And Jesus came and said, I'll pay it. And He paid my debt. That's why we can look at each other and we can respect one another, even if we've wound up in debt and we've been irresponsible as financial managers. We can look each other and we can respect one another and say, I love you, I respect you. Let's together become responsible because of the one who paid off my debt at the cross. Because of what He did for me, I'm going to become the responsible person, the contented person that He made me to be. And the third step to contentment is giving full rights to Jesus to do whatever he wants in your life. Anything. God, if you say have it, then I'll have it. If you say it's not for you, then it's not for me. If you say if you say you don't need a screen this big, you need a screen this big, then I'll get one this big and I'll be happy. If you say you don't need a screen at all, then I'll get no screen at all and I'll be happy. If you say that if you say what I need is to lower my expectations a little bit, then I'll do that. Okay. Allowing Jesus to be the Lord of everything in your life. You can't do it without making him Lord of this. He's got to be Lord of that. You know how much of your life is wrapped up in there? You know how much of your life is contained in that little thing right there? It's a lot. If you lose it, yeah. You know that feeling that hits your heart when that tells you how much of your life is wrapped up in it right there. Because if I lose it, I'm like, everything stops until I find my wallet, right? He's going to have to get control of your wallet. You see, it's not really what's in your wallet. It's who's got control of your wallet. Yeah. So what I would ask you is this. Where do you stand with God? Do you know that God has paid your debt? Do you know that? Have you turned your back on your sin, or are you just still running down the road, doing whatever I want to do? I want what I want, no matter what anybody else says. That's the attitude of sin, and that's where the actions of sin flow out of. Jesus Christ died in your place for your sins for that attitude. He did. Now the question is whether you will turn your heart away from that attitude and follow after him. And that is salvation. That is being saved. That's what it means. I'm turning myself away from sin. I believe Jesus paid my debt, and I want him more than anything else in the world. That is becoming a Christian. Not coming to church, not signing a card, not jumping into and getting involved in a ministry in the church, not helping at the food pantry. Salvation is saying, I turn away from my sin. I believe in Jesus with all of my heart. He paid my debt. I'm forgiven. That is a good news. Would you bow your heads with me for a moment?